it's always afterwards we can hindsight we can say, oh, that's what that means. That's his partner finding her freedom, Aquarius, ninth house, developing her intellect, hopefully, with Mercury there, with his death, after his death, Libitina. And progressed Libitina at 7 Pisces is right on Uranus. And that's also quincunx Saturn. So he really, really had those 3 death asteroids, natal and progressed, all in totally appropriate dramatic pictures and aspects. Then there's an asteroid named Ate, A-T-E, looks like English 8. That's an interesting one from the Greek pantheon. It was the only goddess that was considered like almost totally evil, no redeeming features. And that was right on Ascendant at his death. And of course it had been there for a while because the asteroids aren't that fast. It's probably been there at least 2 years. So he was fighting some kind of inner devils there, feeling trapped. It had moved into the quincunx to his natal Mars also, which was natally closely, exactly 1 degree. Quincunx is ascendant. Then there was something major going on here psychologically. Now the progressed midheaven at 2 Taurus was within 10 minutes of longitude, opposite the natal part of death at 2 Scorpio. And the north node of Mars was at 3 Taurus, so it was also within orb of opposite the part of death. Mars is the life force, whether it's Mars or the nodes of Mars or rulers of the first house, Senate, whatever. And the 8th house cusp, on the other hand, was 3 Pisces, so it was past the trine to the part of death, but it was still sextile the north node of Mars. And it was squaring the progressed part of death at 3 Gemini. And the 3 Gemini progressed part of death they always retrograde in progressions, had gone back to be within orb of quincunx, the natal part of death. So progressed part of death, quincunx, natal part of death, and square progressed 8th house cusp. Dramatic picture. And the quotidian midheaven was at 3 Aquarius, also within orb of squaring the natal part of death, but trining the progressed part of death. So it was an out for him, and of course it was also square that north node of Mars. But it let him out. The progressed south node of Mars was at 28 Sagittarius, so it wasn't quite in the opposition to the anti-vertex. That had been going through the opposition. Progressed anti-vertex had been going through the opposition to the south node of Mars, but it was no longer exact. And I don't know if that has any other exact aspects. Yeah, Neptune. That node of Mars is trioctile, progressed Neptune, and the ascendant had moved in to also set off that trioctile sesqui-square. Faith, again, as an issue. The node of Mars in Sagittarius, aspecting Neptune, and the ascendant, personal action. He finally reached the point where he realized he wasn't God and couldn't be God, even though he'd been trying. The quotidian ascendant, by the way, quotidian angles are moving around the whole chart in 1 year. So they move approximately 1 degree a day. And it can vary a little, of course, but it's close to 1 degree a day. And so they're very sharp timers when you have an exact event to the day. And the quotidian ascendant was 24 Taurus, just under 25 Taurus. So it had maybe was still in orb, or maybe had just left trine to the natal sun. And Again, that's an out. Ascendant trine sun is free. I'm loose. Let me go. And progressed ascendant was also trining the south node of the moon and progressed Chiron. And this reminds me a bit of she really had wanted to go ever since her husband died. She adored him and really was depressed ever since he died. And when she finally got out, it was with so much fire. I've never seen so much fire in a chart. Like, I'm free. I'm flying out of here. Okay, that's maybe enough to get the idea. The Quotidian anti-vertex was at 25 Aries, so that also was just past the square to the Sun. Venus was coming into the square, but wasn't there yet, progressed Venus, and of course it wouldn't have been there for some months. And so that was not exact. Let's see, it did have, however, of course, aspect. It was semi-square Uranus and progressed Libitina, that progressed Venus. And the, did I put the other quotidian angle? Yeah, quotidian east point was at 7, not quite 8 of Taurus. So it was still opposite progressed Ceres. So, and it was just started the square to natal Juno. So the quotidian daily east point that day formed a T-square to Ceres and Juno, separation from kids and wife. So perhaps that's enough. It was also sextile Pluto, of course. That's perhaps enough to let you go on fiddling with these. And we will look at, and I redid it with the proper time, and really didn't make that much difference. Let me see if I can pull out her previous chart, which I had here somewhere. This veil of charts. There she is. To compare, it's a fairly minor difference. Ascendant moved from 25 back to 24 Cancer. However, that changed the Dwad. The ascendant Dwad is now Aries, the Aries Dwad, which supports the freedom instead of being a Taurus Dwad. And the midheaven also changed Dwads, moved from 8 Aries, where it was in the Cancer Dwad. It moved back to 7 Aries, which is the Gemini Dwad. So that supports her independence and intellectual curiosity and love of travel and all this and that. And the progressed midheaven now actually is not quite in Gemini yet. It's only in 29 Taurus. And it just started the opposition to the natal sun. Just started. 1 minute into orb when her father died. And opposition to midheaven is parent, and opposition to sun can be a separation from a loved one. And the her local part of death is at 11 Sagittarius, 19 right on natal Mars. So that's a major, that's the progressed position. And her south node of Mars is at 12 Sagittarius, also within orb of natal Mars, and also progressed Juno. There's a clustering in there. And the local anti-vertex and the north node are there at 10 of 11 and 11 of Gemini. Local anti-vertex now is back at 10 Gemini, 51 in the progressed position. So they're just all clustered in there. That also just started the opposition to Mars. The midheaven just started the opposition to the sun, and the local anti-vertex just started the opposition to Mars, both within 1 minute. So that really looks like the hospital time might be right on. Then the natal progressed part of death is at 22 Aquarius. So it didn't quite make it to be opposite progressed east point, which is now 24, and progressed Ceres is 26. So we did miss that east point opposite Ceres we had before, but the east point is at 24 is let's see, does that have any aspects? Well, it's sextile the semi-sextile the ascendant now, and therefore it's quincunx the seventh house cusp. So it does have a separation aspect to seventh. Could be anybody, could be just her traveling and temporarily separating from her trips back home. And Ceres, of course, is still in the square to Mercury for her concern for her mother, and the mother being affected by the death of her husband. And the north node of Saturn is now progressing over the ascendant, and that lasts for years and years, so that's not a short aspect. But the progressed local ascendant and the progressed antivertex, both at 28 Cancer, are conjunct the natal north node of Saturn. They're all there at 28 Cancer. And the progressed north node of Mars is just past the midheaven, barely, at 8 Aries 37, but opposite the progressed moon at 8 Libra. So moon opposite Mars. And, of course, there's sextile trine Saturn. So there are protective aspects at the same time that there are some conflict ones. And the moon had just finished going over the fourth house cusp, if this time is right, but it still has other aspects like the sextile to Saturn, and there's a couple of planetary nodes in there in the 8th house, and the north node of Vesta is 8 Cancer, so the moon was square that, and it was also, let's see if it had reached the aspect, just coming to the aspect to progress south node of the moon. Just about 2 days short of that. And it had started the trine Ceres, which is her going back to give aid and comfort to her mother. The 2 keys to mother. And on the whole, they suggest that her mother will be able to handle it. The moon trine Ceres. What else? I have the natal part of death was at 15 Libra and 20 minutes. So it was not quite in the square to natal palace, but progressed Mercury was square it. Mercury 15 Capricorn, part of death 15 Libra. And the local natal part of death was 1 Leo 44, if my mental math is correct. So natally that was squaring Chiron, and that's natal Chiron, not progressed. And let's see, was there anything aspecting that? Don't see anything at progressed at 1 degree of any of the signs. 16 Virgo, 16 mutable would be the octiles or trioctiles. I don't see any of those either, so don't see an aspect to that, unless we go digging for nodes and midpoints and things like that, which you could probably find if we looked. And the asteroids won't have changed that much. That few minutes difference would really only change the moon and the angles, mainly the angles. Now, I did look at the quotidians, and I didn't write them in the chart, but I just marked up on the tabular page is the second page that I get that gives the nodes of the planets and gives them a few Arabic parts, and the progressed, it gives the quotidian angles. They just are a Q, so it's Q, MC, Q ascendant, ASC, and so on. So let me just read those off. The Quotidian midheaven. This is the day of her father's death. Quincunx moon. Midheaven's like father. Moon, quincunx, separation from mother. Quotidian ascendant. Opposite progressed Saturn. How about that? She separated from father. Quotidian antivertex. Quincunx Venus and progressed Jupiter. The Quotidian east point. Opposite progressed Mars. Change and again her personal action. The Quotidian local in Los Longe midheaven square Mars in the south node and progressed Juno and the local progressed part of death and the progressed south node of Mars. A whole gang up there. That local Quotidian midheaven is in 11 Pisces, 36 minutes. And the local Quotidian ascendant, 29 Gemini, almost into Cancer, was Quincunx the Sun within orb. It was 29:54 the time I ran it. This changes a degree a day, remember. Local Quotidian antivertex, 17 Taurus, almost 18, was semi-square the Arabic part of Saturn. The Arabic part of Saturn is ascendant plus Saturn minus Sun. And the local Quotidian east point was semi-square the progressed antivertex and the progressed local ascendant. Every one of them had major aspects. But some of those are just so dramatic because they're so appropriate. Saturn, progressed Saturn, part of Saturn, midheaven. So that's the general picture. It looks like this was definitely an event that was scheduled. Character becoming destiny, and it's a matter of personal attitude, how we handle our events, and can't change anyone else. We can only change our own attitude and actions.